You can't wait until life isn't hard anymore.
I'm not going to give you a yes.
We watched America's Got Talent contestants walk onto that stage filled with hope, dreams, and courage. Some made us laugh, others brought us to tears. But when the lights went off and the cameras stopped rolling, real life took a very different turn. Today, we're uncovering the shocking and heartbreaking stories of America's Got Talent contestants who are now dead or behind bars. Bernie Barker.
My field was radiation protection. Some of the craziest reactions to my act have been female.
You would not normally imagine a man in his 60s stepping onto a stage as a stripper, yet that is exactly the path Bernie Barker chose. What began as a simple effort to rebuild his health slowly transformed into an extraordinary and unexpected chapter of his life. Bernie was born on July 31st, 1940. And for most of his years, his life followed a familiar routine. He worked steadily at a nuclear power plant, living quietly and responsibly, never seeking attention or applause. Everything changed when he reached 60 and underwent surgery for prostate cancer. After the operation, Bernie faced a long recovery. He needed a way to regain his physical strength and confidence, something that would push his body to heal rather than slow down. That search led him to dancing. At first, it was only exercise, a method to rebuild muscle and stamina. But over time, what started as movement for recovery turned into performance. Bernie discovered a spark he never knew he had. In 2000, he entered his very first stripping contest. It was not something people expected from a man his age, and that surprise became part of his appeal. One contest led to another, and before long, Bernie was competing regularly. Over the years, he entered 42 contests, and remarkably, he won every single one of them. His confidence grew alongside his reputation, and audiences began to see him not as an oddity, but as a performer who refused to let age define his limits. By 2003, his story had become impossible to ignore. Guinness World Records officially recognized Bernie Barker as the oldest male stripper in the world. The title was unusual, but it symbolized something deeper. Bernie had turned recovery into reinvention, proving that life could still surprise you long after most people believe their best years are behind them. In 2006, Bernie decided to take another bold step. He auditioned for the first season of America's Got Talent. Surrounded by much younger contestants, he stood out instantly. Many viewers did not know how to react, but Bernie walked onto that stage without hesitation, performing on national television with the same determination that had carried him through his recovery. What makes Bernie's story even more powerful is the reality behind it. The cancer that pushed him toward dancing never truly disappeared. He continued performing for as long as his body allowed, refusing to let illness silence his spirit. On March 21, 2007, Bernie Barker passed away from prostate cancer. His journey remains a reminder that courage can take many forms, and sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the strongest legacies. Some of these stories are just as heartbreaking as any shattered love story. However, the next one tells the story of a man whose fate took a very different turn. Michael Keter.
Be one of the best performers of all time, like one of the best.
It's difficult to imagine, but some of the faces we once rooted for on America's Got Talent are no longer living normal lives. Some are gone, some have been behind bars, and others carry stories forever changed. Michael Keter is one of the most heartbreaking examples. People did not remember him only for his voice, but for the man he appeared to be beyond the stage. He was a pediatric nurse, a father of 6 children, and a husband doing his best to hold his family together. When Michael walked onto the America's Got Talent stage in 2018, it felt like more than a performance. It felt like a window into a life already shaped by hardship, responsibility, and quiet strength. His voice carried emotion, but his story carried weight. When Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer, it felt as if someone finally recognized everything Michael had been carrying for years. The moment changed his life overnight, and he went on to reach the top 5 of the competition. For a brief moment, It looked like everything was finally falling into place. But the celebration was short-lived. Just one day after the season ended, Michael's name appeared in the news again. And this time, it had nothing to do with music. He was arrested in Hollywood following a dispute with his wife, Ivy. Police responded to their hotel after a report of an argument and noticed a red mark on Ivy. Although she chose not to press charges, California law allows officers to move forward when there is visible evidence. Michael was taken to the Hollywood police station, booked, and later released. He told reporters that the situation was a misunderstanding, saying it was only an argument and that it never became physical. Law enforcement, however, believed otherwise, and the incident quickly overshadowed everything he had accomplished on the show. The timing made the situation even more painful. Just the day before, Michael had stood on stage singing a song written especially for him by Garth Brooks. He had opened up publicly about nearly losing his wife during childbirth, sharing deeply personal moments that caused millions of viewers to believe in him and his family. When the arrest became public, it felt like a shock to many fans, not only because of what happened, but because of who it involved. Michael was seen as one of the good ones, a man devoted to helping sick children, raising his kids, and protecting his family. By the end of that same week, his story carried a scar that could not be erased, no matter how much he tried to explain or move forward. And the next story? It does not end in a courtroom or a short-lived headline. It ends behind bars for nearly 4 decades. Not every tragedy looks like a crime at first glance, but sometimes the deepest tragedies come from moments where the system gets it completely wrong. Archie Williams.
Hey, man. Matt, let me ask you something, man. What was it like for you hearing that you're sick?
Most people remember the voice first, but long before the lights, the music, and the stage, Archie Williams spent more than half of his life locked inside a prison cell for a crime he never committed. When he stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage at 59 years old and sang "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me," the room fell silent. Every note carried decades of pain, patience, and survival. It wasn't just a performance. It was a life speaking back to the world. The story begins in 1983. Archie was only 22 years old when he was arrested in Louisiana. He was accused of assault and attempted murder in a brutal attack that had taken place 4 months earlier. Despite the lack of solid evidence and claims that Archie was at home at the time of the crime, he was convicted. There was no proof beyond reasonable doubt tying him directly to the scene. Yet the court sentenced him to life in prison without parole. Archie was sent to Angola, one of the most notorious prisons in the United States. Inside those walls, years slowly turned into decades. For 37 years, Archie maintained his innocence, telling anyone who would listen that he did not commit the crime. His voice, however, went unheard for a very long time. Hope seemed distant, and freedom felt impossible. Everything began to change when the Innocence Project took an interest in his case. They pushed for a closer examination of the fingerprint evidence that had been used against him. For years, those requests were denied. Time passed, and Archie continued waiting. Then in 2019, a judge finally allowed the fingerprints to be re-examined. The results changed everything. The prints did not belong to Archie. Instead, they matched another man who had committed a similar crime in the past. Truth, delayed but not destroyed, finally came to light. Archie was released after spending nearly 4 decades behind bars for something he never did. On May 26, 2020, just over a year after walking free, Archie stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage. He sang an Elton John classic, and by the time he reached the final note, the entire room was on its feet. The judges were visibly moved. All 4 voted him through. Even Simon Cowell, known for being one of the toughest judges on the show, was shaken. Elton John later said Archie brought true meaning to the song and moved him to tears. From that moment on, Archie's story became more than a wrongful conviction. It became a symbol of resilience and hope. Simon Cowell even became a public supporter of the Innocence Project after witnessing Archie's journey. Archie went on to reach the finals of the competition. Although he did not win, he had already overcome something far greater than a television contest. Later, he returned for AGT, All Stars, and performed Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers. Once again, he did not make it to the finale, but the result hardly mattered. Archie had already gone farther than most people could ever imagine. Losing 37 years of his life did not silence him. It did not break him. He stood before the world and sang, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Archie Williams did not just survive prison. He came back with his voice, his truth, and something powerful to give. And yet, not every America's Got Talent story finds redemption. Kabir Singh.
This fuck you got. Really? That's so dope. 5 months.
Kabir Singh was never the kind of comedian who slowly warmed up a room. He walked on stage, dropped a line without hesitation, and before you could prepare yourself, laughter had already taken over. His delivery was quick, sharp, and fearless. People knew him as Kabizi, a nickname that fit his energy perfectly. Kabir understood what it felt like to stand out, to be misunderstood, and to constantly explain who you were to people who never really listened. That lived experience gave his comedy its edge. He was born in Portland, Oregon in 1984, into an Indian family in a place where almost no one looked like him. Growing up, he often joked that he was the funniest Indian kid in Oregon, mostly because he was usually the only one. At 9 years old, his family moved to Bombay. For a brief moment, he thought he might finally blend in. Instead, the teasing returned, this time for being too American. His accent, his clothes, the way he spoke and moved all became targets. So Kabir did what came naturally. He turned the pain into humor. He learned to make people laugh in 3 different languages, using comedy as both armor and survival. When his family moved back to the United States at 13, the labels flipped again. Now he was considered too Indian. Caught between 2 worlds, Kabir eventually found his voice on stage, saying out loud what he had always carried inside. He talked about identity, confusion, and the frustration of never fully belonging. To his surprise, audiences connected. By 2014, Kabir hit a major milestone. He entered the San Francisco International Comedy Competition, a stage that once helped launch legends like Robin Williams and Ellen DeGeneres. Kabir didn't just win. He made history by placing first in every show of the final round, something no one had done in nearly 40 years. That victory pushed his career forward at full speed. He appeared on Comedy Central and Fox, voiced a character on Family Guy, and toured internationally, selling out shows across the UK and India. He opened for major names like Dave Chappelle, Joe Coy, and Russell Peters. Yet, no matter how big his career grew, Kabir remained relatable. In 2021, he brought that same energy to America's Got Talent. He moved quickly through the competition, reached the semifinals, and left a strong impression even without winning. After the show, he continued performing, releasing a special called Bollywood in 2023. On November 2 of that year, Kabir performed in Manteca, California. Just a month later, on December 4, 2003, he passed away peacefully in his sleep at 39. Friends and fans were stunned. TMZ later reported ongoing health issues and suggested natural causes. His funeral was held on December 14th in Hayward, California. America's Got Talent released a statement honoring his talent. Kabir Singh may be gone, but his voice, humor, and unfinished journey still echo loudly. Neil Boyd.
So I know how to give a speech. I know how to talk.
Neil Boyd was born in Sikeston, Missouri in 1975. He was raised by his mother as a single parent alongside his brother after his father left the family. Money was always tight, but music filled the gaps where comfort was missing. One defining moment came when his brother brought home a 3 tenors CD. Neil listened closely, then taught himself to sing by imitating legends like Luciano Pavarotti and Placido Domingo, discovering a voice far bigger than his small-town surroundings. By the spring of 2008, Neal was living a quiet life, working as an insurance salesman. Then, without telling anyone, he made a sudden decision that changed everything. He got into his car and drove to Chicago to audition for America's Got Talent. There, he stood in line with nearly 20,000 hopefuls. When his turn finally came, he sang Billy Joel's New York State of Mind and followed it with The Prayer by Andrea Bocelli and Celine Dion. His performance stood out immediately. Neal returned to the AGT stage later in the competition and delivered a powerful live performance of Nessun Dorma. The audience erupted, and the judges sent him straight to Las Vegas. On October 1st, 2008, the final 5 contestants Neal Boyd, Eli Matson, Nothing But Strings, Donald Braswell, and Queen Emily performed one last time. That night, Neal was announced as the winner. He closed the finale by singing Nessun Dorma once again, sealing one of the most emotional victories in the show's history. His hometown honored him by declaring October as Neal E. Boyd Month. He performed at Rockefeller Center during the holiday season and released his debut album, My American Dream, in June 2009. The album reached number 3 on Billboard's Classical Albums chart. Neal went on tour across 10 cities with Britain's Got Talent winner Paul Potts and appeared on major shows like Today and Live with Regis and Kelly. Sadly, his success was short-lived. On June 10, 2018, Neal passed away at his mother's home in Sikeston due to heart and kidney failure. He was just 42 years old. A private funeral was held on June 15. Days later, a local editorial described him as someone who used his God-given talent to uplift others and who burned brightly in a short life. In November, what would have been his 43rd birthday, family and friends gathered at Southeast Missouri State University to honor him with music, stories, video, and an audio message Neal had recorded himself. In February 2019, Paul Potts dedicated Nessun Dorma on AGT, the champions to Neal, calling him a true champion whose heart and story could never be taken away. Emily Gold.
He got vascular dementia, and that is a terrible thing.
Emily Gold was only 17 years old when she stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage as part of the Los Osos High School dance squad. The pride on her face said everything. Years of training, leadership, and discipline had led her to that moment. No one could have imagined that just 1 month later, the same young dancer who energized a national audience would be gone forever. On the night of September 13th, a Friday at 11:52 p.m., officers from the California Highway Patrol received a distressing call. Someone had been reported on the eastbound 210 freeway in Rancho Cucamonga. When officers arrived, they discovered a teenage girl in the carpool lane who had been struck by at least one vehicle. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Soon after, the San Bernardino County coroner confirmed the devastating truth. Emily Gold had taken her own life. The shock was overwhelming, especially considering how recently she had been celebrating a major milestone. Just weeks earlier, Emily and her team had impressed the judges during their audition and advanced to the quarterfinals before being eliminated on the August 14th episode. Still, their performance left a mark. Simon Cowell even stood to praise them, calling it absolutely brilliant, and saying the energy reminded him of High School Musical and made him wish every kid could attend a school like theirs. Emily stood proudly at the front of that group. She was a senior at Los Osos High School and the varsity dance captain. She carried the responsibility of leading her team while balancing schoolwork and the pressure of performing on national television. The day before their episode aired, she spoke to People magazine, explaining how demanding it was. She said she focused on corrections until just minutes before going on stage, admitting it was difficult, but adding with determination, "We make it happen!" No one saw the pain behind her smile. That is what made the loss even heavier. One moment, she was being celebrated across the country. The next, her name was part of a tragedy no one wanted to accept. After the news spread, grief poured in from every direction. A GoFundMe, organized by Jeanette Fierro, raised more than $60,000 to support Emily's family. Her dance team shared a heartfelt tribute, remembering her strength, kindness, humility, and leadership. She was more than a performer. She was a role model, a teammate, a daughter, and a friend. Emily Gold's story is not just about talent or television. It is a reminder that even those who appear strong, successful, and joyful may be fighting battles no one can see. Every time her audition is replayed, viewers now understand that behind that smile was a young girl doing her best to hold on. Jane Marchevsky.
I have this fighting spirit in me that sometimes is a little bit uncalculated.
Jane Marchevsky stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage with a quiet smile and a song born from the hardest chapters of her life. At first, no one fully understood what she carried inside, but the moment she spoke, the room changed. Her voice was not just beautiful, it felt like resilience itself. To the world, she became known as Nightbird. Jane was born on December 29, 1990 in Zanesville, Ohio. The youngest of 4 children, she grew up in a small town where creativity became her refuge. She began writing songs at the age of 6, long before anyone could imagine where that passion would lead. Music followed her everywhere. She sang at church, volunteered, and found purpose in lifting others. She graduated from Licking County Christian Academy in 2009 and later attended Liberty University in Virginia, where she studied marketing. While still in school, Jane started sharing her music online. In 2012, she released a small acoustic EP titled Lines. A year later, she used Kickstarter to fund another project, Ocean and Sky. Every lyric carried honesty. Every note felt personal. After graduating, she stayed in Lynchburg and became part of the local music scene. In 2014, she returned to Ohio, and soon after married fellow musician Jeremy Claudio. By 2015, they moved to Nashville together, where she continued performing and recording under her married name, with Jeremy helping produce her work. The name Nightbird came from a dream. Jane woke up 3 times during one night to birds singing outside her window. The 3rd time, she realized they were really there. The name stayed. Her sound evolved over time, moving from gentle folk to a more electric style. In 2019, she released Girl in a Bubble and opened for Tori Kelly at Liberty University. Behind the music, Jane was fighting a private battle. In 2017, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. After treatment, she was declared cancer-free in 2018. But the illness returned, and doctors gave her only 3 to 6 months. She fought again, and by 2020 was told it was gone. Then, just before her AGT audition, the cancer spread to her lungs, spine, and liver. Her survival chances dropped to 2%. On the AGT stage, Nightbird sang It's Okay, a song she wrote for herself. Simon Cowell pressed the golden buzzer, moved to tears. The moment went viral. Her song reached #1 on iTunes, but her health continued to decline. In August 2021, she withdrew from the competition. Nightbird passed away on February 19, 2022, at the age of 31. She did not just sing. She showed the world how to hope anyway. 2% was never 0, and her voice still proves that. Skylar Hicks.
Hi, my name is Skylar Hicks, and this is a song I wrote called Illusion.
Skylar Hicks was just 14 years old when she walked onto the America's Got Talent stage. In 2013, there was no flashy setup, no backup dancers, and no dramatic effects. It was only Skylar, her guitar, and an original song filled with emotion far beyond her age. A few years before that moment, she had lost her father, and music became the place where she poured her grief. She taught herself how to write songs, how to play, and how to sing, using melodies to survive pain she didn't yet have words for. When she performed in front of Mel B, Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Howard Stern, every judge said yes. Her performance carried enough weight to move her forward in the competition. Although she didn't make it to the live shows in New York City, Skylar left a lasting impression. People remembered her not just as a contestant, but as a young girl who turned loss into music and stood bravely on a national stage. Even at 14, her presence felt meaningful. As the years passed, life grew heavier. On Monday, December 6, 2021, Skylar was found unresponsive inside a bathroom at a friend's home in Liberty, South Carolina. Her mother, Jody, later confirmed the devastating news. She explained that Skylar had been staying at the house, though she didn't know who owned it. Deputies from the Pickens County Sheriff's Office arrived at the scene, and Chief Deputy Chad Brooks stated that Skylar was discovered on the bathroom floor. Substances and paraphernalia were found nearby. While the autopsy had not yet been finalized, authorities believed she passed away from a suspected overdose. Behind the scenes, Skylar had been fighting battles few people saw. Her mother shared that she struggled with depression and addiction and had been trying for years to overcome both. She also faced legal trouble earlier in her life. In 2018, she was arrested for underage drinking and later served time after a violent incident involving her family. The contrast is heartbreaking. Just a decade earlier, the world saw her singing about holding on, her voice trembling with hope. Despite everything she carried, Skylar wanted to help others. Her mother said music was her way of reaching people who felt lost like she did. She will live on through her music, Jody said. Skylar Hicks was only 23 years old when she passed away. Nolan Neal.
I got a new song called Free I wrote for my mom. It's dedicated to her. I love you, Mom. And
Nolan Neal's story is one that lingers long after the music fades. He was a Nashville singer whose voice once carried him onto two of the biggest stages in American television. Yet behind that talent was a struggle few truly understood. Nolan was found dead in his apartment on July 18th, leaving behind questions, grief, and a silence that felt far too heavy for someone who lived through sound. Audiences first met Nolan through his music. In 2016, he auditioned for The Voice, stepping onto the stage with Incubus's Drive. His performance earned him a spot on Adam Levine's team, and for a moment, it felt like a door had finally opened. Even though his journey on the show ended early, that appearance introduced him to a wider audience who could hear the raw emotion in his voice. 4 years later, in 2020, Nolan tried again. This time, he appeared on America's Got Talent and performed an original song titled Lost. The song felt deeply personal, as if he was singing straight from his own battles. There was vulnerability in every note, and it resonated with many viewers. Still, history repeated itself. Nolan was eliminated during the judges' choice round of the quarterfinals, and once again his time in the spotlight was brief. What most people never saw was the weight Nolan carried off stage. According to the coroner's report, his death was caused by acute combined drug toxicity. It was ruled an accident, not intentional. However, the substances found in his system, including morphine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and acetylfentanyl, revealed the depth of the pain he was dealing with. When authorities found him, Nolan was alone. Near his bed sat a black guitar pick on the desk, marked with powder residue, a quiet and tragic detail. His cousin, Dylan Seals, spoke openly after his passing. He said he was devastated, but not surprised, because Nolan had always been honest about his fight with addiction. He was a loving father and son, Dylan said, a light to all who knew him. He also shared his heartbreak for Nolan's 2 children and his mother, Kathy. That is what makes Nolan Neal's story hurt the most. He was not just a contestant or a singer on television. He was a father, a son, and a man who kept singing even while struggling. He had talent, dreams, and people who loved him. And sometimes, even that is not enough to quiet the darkness. What do you think about these heartbreaking stories? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this video moved you, don't forget to like it, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. And before you leave, Be sure to check out the other videos you see on your screen.